This story follows a typical transmigration plot, where a game developer is reincarnated as the villain character in the very game he created with his own hands. But before diving into the thick of it, let's get a bit of background on the game and the unfortunate developer whose fate is about to take a twisted turn. It's the middle of the night, and Kim Woo-jin has finally fixed the bug that had been bugging the hell out of him for weeks. He just finished the game route of a side character known as Decolain von Greyhanuklein. Decolain is one of the intermediate bosses in the game and a named villain. There were countless errors Woo-jin had to fix because he needed to optimize the game so that no matter what route the player chose, Decolain's death was inevitable. Just as he's done grinding his ass off to complete the work, his ex walks in. She also happens to be the team leader of the development team. Woo-jin had a good time with her when they were together, but their relationship grew distant as their personalities clashed. While he was a lazy ass who did nothing but procrastinate, she was a workaholic. She was so ambitious that it even helped him become a better person. However, their relationship still ended in a breakup, and he ultimately couldn't change despite her efforts. 6 months later, he heard she had someone new by her side. Anyhow, as she notices him working on Decolain, she casually drops a bomb that Decolain's character design was based on Woo-jin himself. Even Decolain's traits and skills perfectly complemented Woo-jin's personality. She suddenly notices her boyfriend waiting outside, so she leaves. It's almost 2 a.m., and Woo-jin is still testing Decolain over and over to make sure everything is perfect. Woo-jin doesn't like the fact that Decolain is supposed to resemble him. See, when Decolain was a child, he was called a magical genius and put on a pedestal, but in reality, he was more midcore than anyone could have. His arrogance and noble background shaped him into someone with the worst personality. Decolain's character is so twisted that even calling him human would be a compliment. As the story progresses, Decolain is supposed to get stronger, and throughout the game, he is surrounded by people who love to hate him. Woo-jin decides to add another personality trait, something special and distinct only to Decolain. Given that this villain takes after him, he adds an attribute called comprehension. Not only that, Woo-jin sneaks in a few of his favorite attributes: wealth, Midas touch, sharp eyesight, and iron will. After stuffing him with all these goodies, Woo-jin realizes he might have gone overboard. He quickly decides to revert Decolain back to how he was originally supposed to be, because the last thing he wants is another bug popping up right before the release date. But just as he's about to fix it, he gets a text message from someone telling him to look outside. When Woo-jin does, he sees a massive hole in the sky. The last thing he remembers is a lightning strike descending toward him. In the next moment, he wakes up inside the very game world he created. It's already been a few days since he possessed the body of Decolain, a man fated to die no matter what. That's when Decolain's sister suddenly barges in and berates him for slacking off instead of fulfilling his duties as a distinguished professor. She's annoyed that he's cooped up in his room over a damn woman. After dumping a pile of documents that Decolain is supposed to process, she leaves in a grumpy mood. Not before warning him to get his act together. She won't stand for him shaming the household's name. At first, Woo-jin thought this was just a twisted dream, but as days passed, the realistic sensation of life forced him to accept the harsh reality. He still doesn't know if this is some kind of afterlife since he did die from that lightning strike. Whatever the case, one thing is certain: he has now literally become the villain of the game he once developed. If you've forgotten, let me remind you, he's the middle boss in the game. No matter which route you take, he is the root of all problems and the ultimate enemy of everyone. He is responsible for causing pain to countless characters. Another thing Woo-jin is concerned about is that he has no clue which part of the story he's currently in. The only thing he knows is how much mana he possesses. Even so, he has no idea how fast it runs out. He's not joking when he says that everyone, including himself, tested the game around 1,000 times during development, and this character only barely survived once. Decolain was created solely to die and serve his purpose as the middle boss. Woo-jin then glances at the documents Decolain's sister threw at him before storming out. Her name is Yariel von Greyhanuklein, Decolain's half-sister, and the one currently serving as the head of House Uklein in his stead. And it just so happens that Decolain doesn't share a typical sibling bond with her. Decolain also has a fiancée, and her name is Julie. Given how Yariel mentioned Julie in such a bad tone, Woo-jin suspects something must have happened between him and her. The document in his hand turns out to be a contract. Apparently, he has already signed himself up as Professor Decolain at the Impartial University, responsible for teaching basic magic and mana mindset. Looks like he has no choice but to attend the lectures he's supposed to deliver. While he has zero experience teaching, this opportunity also allows him to step outside and gather intel on the current circumstances of this world. A system notification pops up, blinking in front of him. It shows that his primary survival goal is to become necessary to the game. For the side quest, he is supposed to deliver a lecture in university. If he completes the quest, he'll be granted 0.5 store currency. He recalls how there are routes where Decolain dies because of Yariel's actions. To avoid that, he gets up to fulfill his current mission, not to mention that store currency will be crucial for his survival, though he's not quite sure which topic he's supposed to deliver a lecture on. He figures he doesn't have to worry about it. After all, he has the comprehension skill he added before being transmigrated into the game. This attribute helps him understand literally anything. The only thing he needs is a little mana to activate it. As he prepares and changes into something more formal, he notices how drastically different this place is from where he used to live. Yet, at the same time, he moved through everything effortlessly, as if he had lived his entire life as Deculine. Under normal circumstances, he would have felt out of place wearing clothes like these, but now they feel elegant and bring him comfort. And it's all thanks to one of Deculine's attributes: intimidation, dignity, and aesthetic sense. It's as if Deculine is allowing him to completely take over this body. Woojin doesn't even feel the urge to say anything that would be considered rude. The formality that Kim Woojin once found rigid now feels natural. Although his main purpose is to gather information, this walk toward his first lecture feels completely normal, as if he's always belonged here. He can absolutely feel himself fulfilling the role of a noble, one of the superior members of the aristocracy. It's a stark contrast to the life he originally had. Kim Woojin was a nobody from South Korea, with fairly average looks, a lazy, supposedly pathetic guy who was even dumped by a girl. But now, as Deculine, he wants to embody the role of a noble properly. As he proceeds to enter his car, he recalls that he has never been in such a luxurious vehicle before. Speaking of nice cars, he remembers his ex's boyfriend, who also had one just to flex. Suddenly, he notices a young boy sitting in the adjacent seat. When the boy realizes Deculine is there, he frantically greets the professor and proceeds to hand over some documents. Seeing this, Deculine entertains the possibility that this person is perhaps his assistant, or maybe even his secretary. Deculine questions him about his identity, which causes the boy to get a little startled, especially since he has already been serving Deculine for 3 years. Deculine soon realizes that the document he assumed was lecture material is actually just a script for him to read. It contains all the information needed for the lecture, down to every detail. He isn't surprised, though. Given Deculine's nature, there was no way he would have been capable of preparing material himself, considering how prideful and untalented he is. Which means this boy has done all the work. So, Woojin feels more than obliged to use a few words of appreciation. The boy is startled upon receiving a compliment. Even the driver is bewildered to hear his master saying something nice for once. Woojin also feels the recoil of this body after offering praise. It's a literal physical reaction. He actually feels sick after complimenting someone, which only makes Woojin question just how terrible of a person this guy Deculine really is. He felt the same sickening sensation when leaving the manor earlier. It seems that Deculine's consciousness is trying to invade his own. After their short journey, they finally arrive at the Imperial University, a place bustling with life. Now that he's here, his next task is to find the area mentioned in the documents, Rodeo Hall. Once we arrive at the designated place, we see that the students have already taken their seats. And surprisingly, they seem eager to attend Professor Deculine's lecture. Rumor has it that Deculine is a master of spell interpretation, a talent that once earned him the title of child prodigy at a young age. Once our guy finally graces the class with his presence, he calls for their attention, introducing himself as Deculine von Greyhanuclean. He is here to lead this class as the head professor of the university's magic tower. With the formalities out of the way, he begins the lecture. The female students are absolutely smitten by how handsome and imposing Deculine is. But one particular female student does not share the same sentiment. As far as she is concerned, Deculine is an enemy of her father, nothing more than a piece of trash in her eyes. To understand why she harbors such resentment, we need to look into the past. Almost 3 years ago, her father took his own life. For many years, he dedicated himself to researching spell interpretation. But when someone extorted his thesis from him, he fell into complete despair and ultimately chose death. The person who robbed her father of his life's work was the one everyone called a genius spell interpreter. And that despicable person was Deculine. With the loss of her father, she was powerless to do anything. In the end, she lost everything, including her family's house and territory, becoming an orphan with nowhere to call home. So, she made a vow, a promise to take revenge on that bastard. To fulfill that pledge, she fought her way into the Empire's Royal University, where Deculine is a professor. While other students may not know the truth, she is determined to expose the fact that Deculine's so-called spell interpretation skills are nothing more than a stolen bluff, achievements that rightfully belong to her father. She can't stand seeing him occupy a place that was supposed to be her father's, but as much as she wants to expose him right away, she knows she needs to stay calm. Because the only way to take him down is to orchestrate her revenge meticulously. Deculine once again commands the room's attention, introducing himself as the head professor of the magic tower and a monarch mage who controls the elements. With that, he begins his lecture. He starts by explaining the fundamentals of magic, its 3 major attributes and 9 types. Attributes are the origin and source of magic, while elements are the materials that make up objects. The 9 types include summoning spirits, destruction, support, enchantment, manipulation, ductility, bewitchment, and lastly, harmony. As Woojin continues delivering the lecture, he realizes that this job is actually much easier than he initially thought. It's his first time teaching, and he is unfamiliar with the theory of magic. Yet even though he is simply reading from a script, he understands everything perfectly. Not only that, but Deculine's natural presence and overwhelming grace make the students hang on to his every word. Even the burdensome traits of elitism, like maintaining interest and eye contact, feel natural rather than oppressive. Perhaps the current Deculine truly possesses the qualities of a great teacher. We then return to the lecture's content, where we learn how the use of mana differs depending on where it is stored in the body. Normally mages store mana in their heads, as it is the easiest place to imagine spells. Knights store mana in their hearts, allowing them to emit it through their blood vessels. Lastly, there is the inner core, which combines internal and external mana, making it the most universally effective storage method. In simple terms, hard work is important. But if one lacks talent, they need to choose a path and focus. Speaking of focusing, Wu Jin reflects on how Decaline's talents aren't that impressive either. His current mana is around 3,500. If you need a comparison to understand how small this mana pool is, consider this. There's a mage whose primary mana is at 30,000. So Wu Jin finds it quite ironic that he's lecturing students about something he should be implementing in his own life. In any case, he concludes the lecture, but there's still one particular line he's hesitating to deliver. He's sure that if it were the original Decalane, he wouldn't have read this sentence. And that line is, if there are any students who want to ask questions, it seems like the students were thoroughly absorbed in the lecture, so there aren't any lingering doubts they have regarding the lecture topic. Even Deculine feels relieved that there are no questions, but just as he thinks this, that same student who has a grudge against Deculine stands up. She recalls an event from last night, where a mysterious spell was discovered in the dormitories. It's assumed to be the work of the devil, but she wants to hear Deculine's thoughts on the matter. Before answering her query, Deculine can't help but call her out for her lack of ethics. She was supposed to mention her name and affiliation before asking any questions. He's not willing to respond to someone who doesn't even know basic classroom etiquette. With that said, he begins to leave. Not because he cares about etiquette, but because he's not in the condition to respond to her question. After all, his comprehension skills consume a huge amount of mana, and he currently has only 2,000 left in reserve out of the 3,375 he originally had. Just understanding the script cost him 300 mana, so he's unsure how much mana it'll take to learn about a spell he's never seen before. Meanwhile, the students are snickering under their breath after seeing how she made a fool of herself. They think she was trying to get the professor's attention, but it backfired. The poor girl is stung by the humiliation caused by the professor's words, but she still tries to persist, hoping to get a response from him. According to her, the magic tower is refusing to analyze the situation, believing it's just a rumor. But if it's Professor Decaline, she's sure they might be able to figure out what kind of magic was used. She casts a spell herself and requests Decaline to interpret it. With no choice, Decaline examines the spell, which instantly costs him around 1,700 mana. She reveals that several remaining debutantes at the dormitory are analyzing it, but they've found absolutely no leads. So she's hoping that Professor Decaline can at least take a glance at it. Without hesitation, Decaline declares that it's barrier magic, and his sudden response catches her off guard. He continues to elaborate that it's a bewitchment-type barrier spell, which means the caster of this spell intended to trap everyone in the dormitory. Now that he's answered her query, he dismisses her, telling her not to persist further. Since the side quest has been cleared, Decaline collects the reward currency he was promised. The scene then cuts to the university's Magic Tower cafeteria, where we meet that girl again, eating without much regard for table manners. By the way, her name is Ephorine. The only reason she had asked that question was to expose that Decaline's spell interpretation skills are a lie, but instead, she became the clown, and the embarrassment she endured was crushing. She's still convinced that Decaline didn't know what he was talking about and just said whatever came to his mind. You see, bewitchment magic is extremely difficult, and most spells require parameters. So, Decaline calling the spell bewitchment magic without mentioning any parameters seems like a stretch. What she showed him was a direct copy of the unknown magic circle that was drawn on the front door of the dormitory last night. While everyone was initially astounded by the unknown spell, it quickly became research material for the new students. So, she knew from the start that Decaline was full of it, making up the claim that the spell was bewitchment magic. But then, one of her friends rushes to her to report that the magic circle on the dorm's front door yesterday is indeed a barrier spell, and they figured it out after collective research. Basically what Professor Decaline said about that spell was in fact true. Ephorine is in absolute disbelief. She refuses to accept that it was actually barrier magic. After all, she doesn't want to acknowledge Decaline as a legitimate master of spell interpretation. Her friend, after rattling off endless praises for Professor Decaline and his capabilities, eventually decides to leave. Before going, she thanks Ephorine for asking the professor about the spell since no one else had the guts to question him. Even so, Ephraim remains unconvinced that Decaline gave the correct answer on purpose. She believes it was just a fluke. What frustrates her even more is that she ended up making him stand out even more. Now everyone is convinced Decaline is a capable professor. She then begins reading through a document detailing the accomplishments of their prestigious Professor Decaline. She's digging deep, trying to learn more about Decaline. After all, there's a famous saying, if you know the enemy and yourself, you will never be defeated. She decides to steel herself. If she has to face the jackass daily, she'll make sure to expose him hard enough to ruin his reputation completely. The scene shifts to Decaline, who is still dreading the worst possible outcome that could have occurred in the classroom. You see, the moment he looked at that spell, his comprehension skill activated automatically. Just looking at the spell circle, with its tangled lines and intricate structure, was enough to drain every bit of mana he had left. And most importantly, even after sacrificing all that mana, he was unable to understand what the spell actually was. Even if he had twice the mana he has now, he wouldn't have been able to grasp the principles behind it. But for now, he's just relieved that everything worked out in his favor. Just as he continues walking, his path is suddenly blocked by a woman clad in white knight armor. With white hair and light-colored eyes, she's a familiar sight. Dekulin immediately recognizes her because he's seen her countless times while working on this game. She is Julie von der Frieden, his supposed fiancée, and a named character who will eventually become the pinnacle of knighthood, though he wasn't expecting to cross paths with her this early. Regardless, he responds to her greeting promptly, claiming that he's doing fine. But Julie doesn't seem convinced. She questions how he can be doing fine after breaking the promise they made a week ago. Of course, Woojin has no clue what promise she's talking about. Since he wants to avoid unnecessary drama this early on, he decides to brush it off. He tries to walk past her, casually claiming that he doesn't recall making any promise. But Julie quickly blocks his path again. She won't let him run away like last time. Seeing how serious she is about this promise thing, Dekulin realizes she won't let him go without an answer. So, he reiterates the same thing, claiming to have forgotten and using his recent fever as an excuse. He requests that she remind him exactly which promise she's talking about. At this point, the story flashes back to 1 week ago. Julie had made a promise to him. If he was truthful to himself and confessed his pretenses and arrogance to everyone, she would always be by his side, even if the world crumbled. Back in the present, poor Julie is on the brink of tears. She wonders if she placed her trust in the wrong person. With a sulking expression, she steps aside, giving him permission to leave. Dekulin doesn't even bother to ask what's bothering her and simply walks away, something that, of course, annoys the hell out of Julie, though she doesn't voice it. Their engagement was purely out of convenience. With the union of Dekulin, a talented mage, and Julie, a talented knight, the heads of their families believed that it would greatly benefit both sides, expanding their influence. The Ucklines and the Friedens, two powerful noble bloodlines, would dominate together. For this reason alone, there was no one to object the marriage, and this is why Julie has been roped to marry him, even though she does not love him a single bit. However, the two households later realized that Dekulin's talents never truly existed in the first place. He was not the talented mage everyone thought he was. Perhaps Dekulin did not wish to acknowledge it, but he had lied to the world by calling himself a genius at analyzing spells, ultimately becoming a professor. There had even been headlines highlighting how the youngest top professor at the Magic Tower is currently on the decline. After that headline ran, he stopped showcasing any accomplishments. But despite this, the Ucklines and the Friedens tried to keep it quiet. And Julie was sure it was because neither household wanted to become the topic of gossip. They didn't want their flaws exposed to the public, but Julie couldn't forgive the situation either. She had accepted the marriage without love, but she could not stand the lies, which conflicted with her beliefs as a knight. To her surprise, Dekulin had agreed to honor her beliefs by remaining a truthful person, but now it seemed to her that it was just another load of bullcrap after all. Before we continue, let's take a moment to provide some background on the Imperial University and the Magic Tower. The Imperial University is the best university in this game, and its magic department is the top department of all. One could compare the magic department to the equivalent of Korean University Medical School and the Magic Tower to the Korean National University Hospital. Woojin takes note of the grandeur of this place. It has a large campus, with a garden that's carefully maintained, resembling an American college campus. His team members, and he had spent many nights working together to create this atmosphere. While he would love to experience this beautiful place, his only regret is that he wishes he were in someone else's body, not the one he currently occupies. Suddenly Woojin notices someone following him. As he turns, he crashes into the person who was closely trailing him. It turns out to be his assistant, who was carrying a lot of documents. The papers scatter all over the ground after the crash. Dekulin didn't immediately recognize it was Alan. He had instinctively thought that someone might have been trying to ambush him. After getting back to his office, Alan finally presents the documents he was rushing to deliver. It's a list of sponsorships for the new mages this year. The Magic Tower is similar to research facilities in the real world. So funding is required for the development of magic. Professors at the Magic Tower sponsor the new mages they deem worthy. As Dekulin goes through the profiles of each candidate, one particular name stands out. The name is highlighted in gold, which he assumes is due to his attribute. This attribute is known as Wealthy Magnate. It allows him to attract wealth and become an exceptional financier with an uncanny intuition for profitable ventures. The more information provided, the more accurate his intuition becomes. Then there's another attribute known as sharp eyesight. This ability allows one to visually perceive institutions, attributes, mana points, and similar elements. It is primarily used in conjunction with other traits rather than on its own. The reason Dekulin is able to identify this promising candidate is due to the combination of his two attributes, Wealthy Magnate and Sharp Eyesight. It's now evident that individuals with names shining in this glittering gold light are sure to bring him wealth. There are a few others like this, but one name stands out the most. That name belongs to none other than Ephraim Luna, the very girl who was actively seeking his downfall. To think that Dekulin's abilities have led him to see her as the most potential candidate for prosperity, even though she is determined to destroy his career. Dekulin recognizes her as one of the main characters in the game. According to the developers, the only information he knows about her is that she lost her father due to Dekulin's actions. He also takes note that Ephraim seems to have no sponsors for some reason. When he questions Alan about it, his assistant reveals that everyone is cautious when it comes to her. Well, it's no surprise. After all, no one wants to anger Dekulin by sponsoring someone who might become his enemy. One thing is commendable about Ephraim, however. Despite not attending the academy and learning magic through self-study, her talent speaks volumes. The potential in her is limitless. Yet, Ephraim Luna is his enemy, or rather, he is her enemy, since he is the one responsible for her father's death. If things proceed as they did in the original game, Deculain knows he might very well end up dead. After all, he is destined to die in the game. He also has the attribute villain's fate, which ensures that the entire world hates him and wants him dead. However, anything or anyone that fails to kill him ultimately makes him stronger. In the game, Deculain dies in countless ways, such as by sword, by poison, by assassination. The method may change, but the outcome is always the same, death. The only way for him to survive is to make different choices that the original Deculain would not have made. With that in mind, he ultimately decides to sponsor Ephraim. After signing the documents, he tells Alan to submit them. He also instructs him to borrow a few books that he is about to mention. Later, as he sits alone, Deculain reflects on how much money he requires to survive. From what he knows, many of the deaths awaiting him can be avoided with money alone. Investing in a promising mage is one way to acquire wealth. However, that alone isn't enough. There are countless characters in this game world who resent him, and they will try to kill him whenever they get the chance. In order to survive, amassing wealth and power is the only way out. While Wu Jin desires to become stronger, he remembers that Deculain's talents are average at best. If he doesn't find a way to improve, he's certain he won't survive the numerous threats closing in on him. Luckily, there is one thing in his favor, his attributes. Deculain can't control all four elements as he boasts, but he definitely has potential in manipulating earth and fire. Combining earth, fire, and metal results in the formation of Deculain's unique attribute. Midas Touch. This attribute consumes the user's mana to unlock the potential of a target. Deculain's talents in manipulating metal also allow him to wield ki-controlled, levitating blades. While it sounds grandiose, these chi-controlled blades are essentially just telekinesis at its core. However, in this world, telekinesis is not widely known or understood. If Deculain learns basic manipulation magic, he can compensate for his lack of raw power by manipulating metal objects. To make this a reality, he needs to first learn the fundamentals of manipulation magic. So, he decides to test his skills. As soon as he activates his comprehension skill, he begins absorbing all the concepts and spells related to basic telekinesis written in this book. Once he has absorbed the knowledge, he uses his newly acquired telekinesis powers on a pen. And just like that, the pen floats into the air. Thanks to his memorize attribute, Deculain can cast the telekinesis spell without needing any incantation. Although the current telekinesis spell he's learned only covers the basics, it's already quite powerful. He can't even begin to imagine the possibilities once he learns more advanced telekinesis. The next thing Deculain wants to figure out is what to do with a magic circle. He considers engraving it over his entire body. In this world, magic circles become stronger the larger they are, so he plans to understand his body first using his comprehend attribute. Not just his brain but his heart and inner core as well. Then he will engrave magic circles all over his body to strengthen his telekinesis. Of course, there is a risk that his body might overload or suffer side effects. But this is where one of his attributes, Iron Man, comes in handy. This attribute grants Deculain innate physical abilities, and the potential of his body is of the highest caliber. He's confident that this attribute will allow him to withstand any side effects. As soon as he starts the process of engraving the magic circle onto his body, excruciating pain triggers throughout his body. A pain unlike anything he's ever felt. It feels as though every bone is breaking, and every muscle is being torn apart. However, as grueling as this experience is, Deculain won't waver. Not a single groan escapes his lips. After all, this is the elegance required of a noble. Finally, the process comes to a halt. Sadly, after enduring all this, Deculain has failed due to an insufficient amount of mana, currently standing at just 1 point. But the effort isn't entirely in vain. He now has a magic circle etched onto his shoulder. At this rate, it will take about 2 weeks to cover his entire body. A month passes after Deculain's seminar, and it's finally the first day of lectures at the University Magic Tower. All the students gather in the remote area, awaiting their first lesson. A notice board nearby contains a message from the professor. The professor wishes to test everyone's abilities, so the students will have to prove themselves by performing on their own in a place already rich with elements. The students are all quite astounded that their teacher just left them to study on their own. The one who is most annoyed by this is, of course, Ephraim. While she curses him under her breath, a girl walks past her and intentionally bumps into her. Naturally, Ephraim, already irritated, turns to confront the girl who just bumped into her. But when she recognizes the person in front of her, her expression quickly contorts into shock. It's none other than Sylvia von Josephine Alade. The two girls lock eyes for a brief moment, but Sylvia just proceeds to walk away, ignoring Ephraim as though she doesn't even know her. Later, as Ephraim is focused on performing a task, her mind is still preoccupied with the encounter. She is certain the girl she encountered is from House Alade. About 10 years ago, the Alides, fearing Ephraim's potential, surrounded their manor with troops and threatened them. So it's beyond Ephraim's understanding that Sylvia doesn't recognize her. Suddenly, the structure she is creating with her magic starts to falter, and Ephraim feels a heavy pressure in the air. It's as if her mana is being sucked somewhere. When she looks in the direction of the disturbance, she spots Sylvia, who has just created an enormous structure which is 1,000 times larger than the one Ephraim was making. Naturally, Ephraim is furious, as the turbulence caused by Sylvia's magic has completely disrupted her work. But Sylvia pays no attention to the noise around her, continuing her task undisturbed. This only infuriates Ephraim further. The fact that Sylvia doesn't even acknowledge her existence is maddening. In an effort to get Sylvia's attention, Ephraim decides to provoke her. She begins throwing jabs at Sylvia, undermining her strength. After all, they were rivals, and Sylvia always used to threaten Ephraim and forced her to step away from magic, all to surpass her rival. But once again, Sylvia refuses to acknowledge Ephraim's presence. She claims she doesn't recognize Ephraim, but mentions having heard about the death of the impudent, negligent noble. Of course, Ephraim is enraged to hear this disrespectful trash talk about her father. Without a second thought, she leaps into the air, her magic activated around her balled-up fist. She's determined to make Sylvia regret what she just said. The enraged Ephraim lunges forth with a powerful strike, attempting to punish Sylvia for her disgusting words about her father. In response, the blonde conjures a protective barrier, her eyes flickering in doubt of her own ability. The collision results in an explosive boom, sending rumbles of winds across the bodies of the students, who groan before the impact. The aftermath of the explosion leads to the students checking on each other's health. When the dust settles, Ephraim is made visible, her left hand grabbing hold of Sylvia's head, roaring at the blonde for ever daring to insult her deceased father. As she continues to threaten Sylvia, Ephraim's eyes dart behind, realizing that some kind of mystical dark light has been created in the distance. The students panic and scream, while Ephraim questions if what she's seeing is a void. It's the same spot where both of their mana collided earlier, causing a rupture in space that is now engulfing everything around it. Realizing that the void is at risk of causing an explosion, the students panic even more and attempt to run away. Even Ephraim understands the risk of the situation at hand. The explosion could send metal fragments bursting everywhere like shrapnel, inevitably spelling everyone's doom. The space-devouring ball of black continues to eat away at its surroundings. Ephraim does her best to contain the magic with her might. All of a sudden she no longer hears its sound or feels its weight, as if the void stopped on its own. When she opens her eyes, a towering man clad in aesthetic noble attire is standing before them. It's their professor, and he has just saved their lives. Decaline's sudden appearance is shocking, but what's even more shocking is the fact that he stopped the fragments using ice magic in an instant. Following that, Decaline left his students' mouths open as he displayed telekinesis magic to control the ice fragments. The sight itself left his students with an impression of the beauty and wonders of magic. Ephraim understands the use of enchantment magic in this case. However, even she could feel enraptured by the mesmerizing use of it before their eyes. With the shards taken care of, the professor spoke, his words denoting the end of the lecture. Turning a strong glare to Sylvia and Ephraim, Decaline tells everyone to leave aside from the troublemakers responsible for creating the situation. Right now, Ephraim's face tells you all you need to know. It's the definition of an oh shit I'm so fucked moment. In the next scene, we jump all the way to the interrogation room. There, Decaline awaited the arrival of the other professors, namely Retlin and Relin, who are the professors of the Spirit Studies and Support Studies departments. Welcoming them is a woman sitting next to Decaline, the chairwoman of the university, Adeline Sigillian. With all the professors seated, they now turn to curiously question the daring student who attempted to strike down a lady of the Elate House. Turns out, Ephraim is classified as a nobody, to the point they discriminate against her worth based on her nameless background. Of course, the situation was prevented thanks to Decaline's intervention, impressing all the other professors. Giving it some thought, Decaline understands the outcome that will result from this disciplinary meeting. It's obvious that the daughter of one of the most influential families will be seen as the victim, while the fallen noble Ephraim, a mere commoner before the university's eyes, will be seen as the evil perpetrator. Hence Decaline feels the urge to involve himself and bring about a shift to that perspective. After all, ever since he set his eyes on Ephraim, he could sense douses of scarlet energy just leaking out of her body. It's as clear as day to a villain character like him, an attribute called the villain's fate. Basically, when the entire world wants you to die, there's trouble brewing, and if he can't influence the outcome soon, his inevitable death will creep closer and closer. The official meeting to conclude Ephraim and Sylvia's fate is sprung into action. Relin is the first one to roar at the Ephraim for senselessly engaging in conflict and jeopardizing the safety of many students. It was only thanks to Decaline's personal involvement that nothing grave happened. In response, dejected as she is, Ephraim states that she cannot mention her reason for the attack. This kind of avoidant response comes across as an offense to the teachers. But right now, all Ephraim can think about is concealing her intentions, so her target, the scumbag Professor Decaline, doesn't know that she's after him. Sylvia's provocative words race through her mind, but even if that is the truth, she can't risk saying anything in front of her one and only target. That is why Ephraim is willingly sitting through discomfort and pain for the sake of her long-term plan. Relin roars at the girl once more, questioning if she's got some sort of an inferiority complex. He drills it into her head, reminding her of their difference in status as a noble and a commoner. Next, Sylvia is told to speak. She also tries to conceal the matter, and excuses that she was responsible for accidentally destroying Ephraim's work, which led to an argument. This puts her as an innocent person in front of the eyes of the disciplinary committee, making it even more irrational for Ephraim to have made her move. The professors continue to grill Ephraim, questioning if she's got anger management issues. Raylan even goes as far as to recommend expelling the student entirely, refusing to slide this incident with a warning. Right now, feeling alienated from the professors, and receiving not a single word in her support, Ephraim feels isolated and cold. All fingers point to her as the culprit. The professors see her as the person responsible. Every insult and every scolding hurled at her, and the worst part is, she can't issue a single response in return. With her father gone, the poor girl is off on her own. The world has shut itself down on her. Blaming Professor Deculane, she pins him as an object of blame for her own mistakes, which is an emotional response befitting a child. Adeline finally speaks, concluding that each professor thinks the same as the next. Before motioning a decision, she wants to hear Deculane's account of the situation. Making his voice clear, he makes a request to the chairwoman. It's right about this moment where Ephraim thinks her life is over now. It's obvious that she's going to be expelled. But to a shocking turn of events, Deculane puts Sylvia under fire, arguing that she too had a fault in the incident that occurred. His response stuns both students, while Deculane continues to hammer his question once more. Ephraim is at a loss for words, unable to have predicted this trajectory in the meeting. Even Rylan, the old fart who chose to see Ephraim as a worthless commoner, is having a field day comprehending Deculane's words. Our boy argues that Sylvia had every reason to act and prevent the incident that was caused. Yet she chose not to. He wonders if her so-called esteemed abilities as one of the ill-aid household fell short in the heat of the moment. Sylvia's in a daze. She lowers her head in shame, apologizing first. Then she confesses the truth. Sylvia refused to block Ephraim's attack because she intended for the student to get into trouble. The silver-haired girl is tripping out. There's no way Deculane, someone who is her enemy, took her side just now. It's her fault too, so it's not like he has to protect her. Raylan speaks up, countering that as a victim, Sylvia's fault matters very little with how she defended. Blame falls entirely on the assailant. Deculane fires back, stating that as a professor, he's the one who failed for creating a lecture that didn't require his presence. He wonders if he should be taking the blame instead. This sudden comment flusters Professor Raylan, who's still on Sylvia's side. Ephraim is out here shocked that this man is steamrolling another professor just to save her ass. It's the height of ridiculousness that he's doing this much to protect her. Having heard enough, the chairwoman concludes her decision. She doesn't think of it as a serious matter, believing that students naturally run into conflict with age. That's why she's more than willing to let this one slide past without any issues. Adeline tells both students to return home as there won't be any consequences this time. Ephraim is having mixed feelings. She was fully prepared to eat an expulsion in her face, and knowing Professor Deculane's personality, things should have concluded that way. So it doesn't make any sense how things concluded the way they did. After the meeting, Raylan applauds Deculane's unique insight and analysis on viewing a situation. But our boy's attention turns to Ephraim, who calls for his attention and musters the resolve to ask him a question. She internalizes that if he's familiar with the name Luna and recalls his association with her father, the one who he put through living hell, causing the man to take his own life to end the pain. Being a master of anticipation, Deculane expected her to reach out to him. This girl is hellbent on getting an answer from him, and wonders how Deculane would respond to her question, and if he would try and overthrow the verdict of the meeting just to protect himself. Even worse, Ephraim feels afraid that this man may not even remember mistreating her father, which would make her situation even worse. Surprisingly, Deculane tells her that she shouldn't busy herself with the troubles of the past, hindering her potential to grow. Saying those words, he departs, leaving Ephraim with one conclusion. She's reached the understanding that he must know about her father, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have helped her just now. She wonders if the professor personally feels some kind of responsibility, which is why he helped her out of her own difficult situation. Ephraim misunderstands his help as a kind of pity. It fills her heart with joy. At least the scumbag professor didn't forget what he did. So long as that is the case, she's okay with the situation. The conclusion of Ephraim's case results in an addition of 2 points for Deculane's death prevention. In the next scene, we see Sylvia explaining the situation to her father, Dilthian, the head of the Illity family, and an Esper mage. His father affirms that the talented student Ephraim Lunas already missed her chance to flourish as a mage. A decade ago, back when the aptitude exam was being held, both girls encountered the other for the very first time. It was during that time that the manometer went crazy before their presence, predicting their immeasurable talent to become future archmages. These two girls just stared at each other blankly, unable to comprehend the slew of words they had just heard. To give you an example of just how powerful archmages truly are, they are classified as beings that not even emperors can threaten. Only a select few people ever rise to this level, and their names are etched in history forever. Tradition has it that 3 people will become archmages in each era, irrespective of their specialty, a rule that has never changed. Interestingly, currently apart from Demerkin, there are 2 empty spots for the archmages of this era. Adeline is actually a candidate for being an archmage, leaving behind one last seat. It was back then that both the Illid and Luna families stood opposite to each other, and now they must compete for the final seat. Of course, Sylvia's father is adamant on his daughter getting that title no matter the cost. So much so that he threatened Ephraim's father by force, exempting him from enrolling her daughter at the academy. Sylvia understood all too well that the only reason her family recklessly overpowered the Luna family was because they wanted her to seize the throne. They wanted to make her archmage no matter the cost, though it is also her personal wish and predicted fate. That's why Ephraim's words from back then stung her so much. She chalks it off as simply being unlucky. While Gilfian isn't exactly worried about her competitor, he's more worried about Professor Decalaine, believing that he's an ordinary man who was a genius at a young age. That's why there's no telling if he could suddenly rise above the ranks and become a dark horse. This isn't new news to Sylvia though, because she could sense his potential from the moment he deciphered her trap. When the explosion happened, it was true that Sylvia eradicated Ephraim's mana. But she also set up a personal trap to launch the void as a conflict between their attacks. This way, the incident would cause even further demise and put Ephraim under fire. The reason Deculaine shot them a glare back then was because he understood this trap from the get-go, despite her being careful of any observation close by. Even though he knew everything, Deculaine kept both of them safe by offering a third way, a compromise. It was his warning, a way of demanding them to play along with his version of the story so that they could survive in one piece. Yes, before you even ask, the One Piece is real. In any case, she grossly underestimated his talents, but now it makes her ponder the kind of man he truly is. A few days flew by. We get to see Deculane's glorious manor. This man is living Bruce Wayne's life over here. Getting all dripped out, this man is escorted by his driver, his thoughts agreeing with his decision to support Ephraim in that critical moment. This way, he removed one of the death roots for himself, and even increased store currency. Personally, he wasn't expecting Ephraim to make herself known so quickly in their first encounter, but he could tell from then on that she was hostile from the start, while his intervention just now has made him an enemy of Sylvia as well. It's still the best course of action he could have taken. Brushing that matter off, Deculaine isn't keen on attending social events. At the same time, he doesn't want the opportunity of gaining store points to just fly past him. After all, he gained a side quest to attend the Flower of the New Year event, adding another half a point to his store currency. As of right now, he still requires a minimum of 5 currency points to access the shop. That's why he's focusing on interacting with the main characters for now. Arriving at his destination, Deculaine is welcomed with honor and respect. The party is full of nobles and their expensive laughter. The professor spots a bunch of named characters that he can interact with. Of them, one stands more notable than ever. It's Helm, a character who Kim Woojin personally modeled in the game. Arriving at the event was good after all, Deculaine believes. He's spotted by an old man out of the blue, who is honored to meet the esteemed Professor Deculaine. His sudden announcement of the professor's name draws attention from many eyes, all darting away to see the professor. The party goes into an uproar, celebrating the professor's great presence. That cool and peaceful confidence he had about the party from earlier, it's all shattered to pieces now. While this is happening, Deculaine hears someone remarking on Ser Ganesha. The professor draws away from the current interaction and follows the trail of the voice. Having heard about Ganesha, he knows that he can't risk not having an interaction with one of the most important characters around. His gaze shifts and carefully picks apart the crowd, but Ganesha is nowhere to be found. Deculaine seriously doesn't want to lose this chance, but unbeknownst to him, the scary adventurer is standing behind him. At this point in the story, she's the 5th strongest character introduced. Deculaine finally locates her on the higher floor, the scarlet-haired woman staring down at the scene. He quickened his pace to meet her, but gets cock-blocked by Ilm, who interacts with him at the worst possible moment. Let's explore Ilm a bit more. He's an exclusive mage of the royal palace, ranked as a monarch, equaling to Decalaine's title. Ilm provokes Deculaine, surprised that the great professor still remembers his name. He wants to check in on Decalaine's research and immediately brings up the mention of some bad rumors. Ilm points out how his research has stagnated in the past 3 years, and many are now questioning Deculane's true abilities and talents. This audacious man is straight up talking shit in his face. It just so happens that Ilm was Deculane's peer in their university. They once had a close relationship, but after Deculaine seized the position of head professor for himself, Helm's jealousy grew harsher and hostile over time. Though the original character would have been peeved by Helm's provocative remarks, our boy is as cool as a cucumber, refusing to respond with impulse. Also, the rumors only mention the truth, so he's fine with them too. Deculane's attention is drawn to shock when he notices that his target, Ganesha, is no longer there. Poor guy wanted to achieve one goal for the day, and it was ruined by this blabbering loudmouth who still continues to yap endlessly. Walking right past him, Deculaine annoyingly swears at him and even calls him a piece of rotten cheese. I love that insult so much I'm gonna be using that as his nickname from now on. Rotten Cheese is left bewildered by the statement. The chill professor refuses to say another word and quickly moves on to locate Ganesha, fearing that she may leave the society even before he can acquaint himself with her. His plan is in shambles as we speak. His sudden disappearance from the event causes a bunch of people to wonder where he went. Deculaine really wanted to end the rotten cheese then and there, but he was limited to his response because of the people around them. To his shock, Ganesha calls his name. She's there standing right next to him. She's curious if he came looking for her. It's true that Deculaine found her unexpectedly, having escaped the clutches of the imbeciles in the gathering event. Still, her reaction makes him wonder if these two have previously met each other in the past. The Scarlet Adventurer lets out a chuckle at his response, when he confesses he merely got lost. Ganesha calls out his little eye and knows he was looking. She apologizes for messing up their earlier mission and even requests letting the matter go. Now it's confirmed that they had a previous relationship based on commissions. The adventurer apologizes once more for failing to recruit a talented child under his wing. It's because of her personal attachment that she ruined the mission, refusing to hand the child over to him. Now, of course, our boy is curious about the context of this discussion, and he's gained an understanding of Deculane's decisions. He was going to use a talented child to do the research in his place and maintain his name. Curiously, Ganesha asks a question. She sensitively asks how long he's going to keep up the facade and remain the way he is. Her careful choice of words puts him into contemplation. It's true that before possessing Deculane's body, he maintained character and acted violently, gaining many enemies and losing trust with the people in his life, even going as far as hurting others for his personal fame. But now, the current Deculanean has come to a decision, confessing that he's going to live a different life. Intrigued, Ganesha is surprised she was fully expecting him to lash out and attack her for that statement. Of course, since she was brash and acted on her own during the mission, Kim Woo-jin, who is possessing Deculane's body, is rather surprised that this bold professor would go as far as to attempt attacking one of the strongest people around at the time. It goes to show the villain's reckless demeanor. While he doesn't know much about the original Deculane's past relationship with Ganesha, he knows for a fact that this woman could easily annihilate him with no effort at all. Two of her most prominent attributes are invincible body and master of martial arts. You can only expect her to go batshit crazy after having those stats. She's one of the few adventurers who has reached the height of her physical stats. Now, because Kim Woo-jin is possessing Deculane's body, there was no instance of hiring assassins to do the deed for him, because if that were the case, Ganesha would have died already. While he's having this contemplation, Ganesha is wondering if this guy hit his head or ate something spoiled today. She can't place a finger on his strange behavior. Deculane's already achieved his goals for today, so he quickens to leave the discussion. Ganesha is rather surprised and wonders if it's really true that he won't be sending anyone after her. Turning to her one last time, the cool professor remarks that it would be beneath him. This girl is literally left too stunned to even speak. Going back to the hall, Deculane internalizes that he could easily utilize Uklean's power to pressurize the adventurer using the guild. However, doing so would only cause his death variables to increase. To his utmost horror, the system informs him that he just prevented a death variable. Bro was not expecting to get murdered tonight. This means for a fact that Ganesha's conversation from earlier could have ended very, very differently. Even a simple social gathering event is waving death flags over his head. Poor guy. The scene switches to Rayleigh, an adventurer who is relative to Julie. The talented knight is sitting in annoyance, clearly disoriented and in a bad mood. Rayleigh realizes what must be causing her sour expression, so she boldly asks if Julie has made any progress with her fiancé as of late. Just hearing that, Julie's body fidgets. Rayleigh clarifies that she means Professor Deculane, as there were rumors spreading about. Recalling his annoying response from their meeting, Julie doesn't hide her frustration, expressing that their relationship is in the gutter. Only this time she confessed it out loud. In a surprising turn of events, the man of the hour comes around to leave. He spots her but he's already leaving, despite being known for loving gathering events. He didn't even shoot a look towards his fiancée, causing people to wonder if he's got a sour relationship with Julie. This adds to the rumors about him. Deculane's early leave from the gathering event raised a number of questions, all leading to one theory. They think it's because Julie and him had a fallout, but of course not even the game developer Kim Woo-jin could have predicted this turn of events. A week has passed since he attended the social gathering event. This man has been putting in the work, looking at his damn muscles as he finesses that pull-up. Apart from his usual memorization and telekinetic training, he introduced working out to his routine to increase his stamina. It's mostly because he nearly died from experimenting with some crazy shit. Just a few days ago, this guy was on the floor, coughing out blood in his miserable condition. Any normal mage would have died from what he did. The only reason he survived is thanks to his Iron Man attribute. Bro is Tony Stark. In a quest to achieve greater strength after encountering Ganesha, he attempted to engrave fire control alongside his telekinetic powers. This would aid his metal manipulation overall. He wanted to upgrade his core magic for his telekinetic ability, cutting off the time needed to learn additional magic. However, this method was extremely reckless even for him. And it was only after experiencing the incredible strain on his body that he felt the need to dedicate some time to training. That's how he came to develop a workout routine. By the end of his routine, this guy is looking like David Lade with his aesthetics. With his morning workout wrapped up, it's time to go to class. The scene jumps ahead to Professor Deculane's office, where we see Alan delivering the professor a message from the magic tower. The sender is classified as someone from a high rank. Prying open the message, Deculane learns that there's an audit hearing in 6 months regarding his research. They just want him to prepare some documents for the hearing by that time. Of course, this is troublesome, because this means Deculane's research is put under fire and under question for being delayed. The thing about Deculane's role is that he's always been classified as the head professor in the eyes of the game. It's critical for him to maintain his title as a professor, because the moment he loses it is also the moment his hopes of returning home will be dashed for good. Right now, he's going to scavenge and find anything worth his time from his laboratory. Deculanen enters the room, which is a complete and utter mess, as if there was an attack of some kind. The place has been uncared for, and if Deculanen frequented the laboratory often, there's no way he would have kept it in this horrendous state. Interestingly, one disgusting spot looks particularly out of place. It begs the question if he was trying to hide something. There's no telling, but Decaline thinks it's a good way to test the waters and